I'm Matt Daugherty, and thank you for inviting me out tonight. We're going to talk about using small flash in an unknown environment. What I'd like to do, though, is kind of get a feel for the room, because this can be a very technical discussion, or we can not make it so technical. And just, if you would, just and for the benefit of everybody here, because I don't think everybody knows each other, just quick, your name and what kind of camera and how long you've been shooting.
Canon 5D Mark III, 7D, a couple other ones too. Been shooting for 30 years, I guess.
That's Woody.
David Hatfield, Canon 7D, 6D, shooting for about 15 years or so.
My name is Lynn. I have a Nikon D3000, and I've been shooting for 6 years.
I'm Debbie, and I've been shooting about 4 or 5 years, and I have a Canon 7D.
I'm Sue Foster. I have a Canon 7D, and I've been shooting probably about 5 or 6 years with my nice camera.
I'm Jim Keck. I've got a Pentax KX DSLR. I've been shooting for about 5 years with it, and I've had a Kodak point and shoot before that, and that's about all I know.
My name is Chris Free. I've had a DSLR since early 2011, but I came over before that. Came from film and video background, so I've been that well over 25 years.
Okay, thanks.
I'm Joe Mowdy, and I have a Canon 60D, and probably been shooting about 7 or 8 years.
Nico Sergio, I have a Nikon D70 and a Nikon D800, and I take pictures off and on, but I've gotten kind of more serious when I retired 4 years ago.
Great. Lots of experience in this room, and there's a lot of pro models and pro consumer models. Prosumer models, I think is what they call them. So there's a.
Oh yeah, the Canon 60D. Yeah.
So that tells me that a lot of this won't be foreign to you. So, and feel free to ask questions. I shoot with I've been shooting film forever, and digital really since it started. I use a 5D3 and shoot with Woody. I think last year we took a little over 19,000 clicks of the shutter together or something like that. And you'll see some of our images that we've done. And get this baby working. I think we'll be good to go. And we're going to do a little show and tell as this is coming up shortly, and we'll take a break and then ask some Q&A. So a small flash, I know everybody knows what these are, but there's some pretty interesting things about them. I'll just bring it over here like this so we don't, we can talk about it. It's certainly lightweight, portable, compact. It does have limited power, we all know that, versus a big strobe like David uses all the time. It's like equivalent to the sun. And there's considerations, your battery pack, your battery life. This has 4 AA cells in it. But then you start, so well, those are knowns, and those do affect you in the field. If we shoot all day at a wedding, we've literally shot a wedding all day long and never changed batteries. And we're firing over 1,000 shots. So how in the world do you do that? Well, you have to think about your settings, and you think about you're not blasting full power every shot. And as we talk tonight, that is a consideration. How you set your camera determines the power that you use, which affects your battery life. And if you're out in the middle of a shoot, or I got to change batteries, you don't have time to change batteries. So
And you can buy external battery packs for those too.
you can. And I've got one, but I've never really had to use it because I've shot smart. And
What batteries do you use? You alkaline or
I use
rechargeable?
rechargeable. Mine's
Okay.
a Duracell. I got a kind of a mid-grade
Okay.
rechargeable. It's a Duracell 1500 amp, I think, or something like that. 1500 milliamp. Woody's got a higher grade battery. He never recharges. I have to recharge more than he does. And
I use in-loop 2700.
That's what I've got in my camera.
so, then you gotta think about off camera or on. And if you go off camera, you gotta think, how are you gonna talk to the flash, depending on what flash you have. And unless you're shooting a new Nikon flash or the new Canon flash with or some other trigger mechanism like Chris has tonight, you gotta tether a wire to these things, and that's not, you can do that too, or you can hold it out here with a wire, and there's ways to get it off flash, off camera, so we can talk about that. And then we'll talk about settings, camera. So, you'll see some of the pictures tonight that we've taken. I didn't take this one, I stole this one, because I didn't really have one that talked about a really kind of good mood that I wanted to show for tonight. So, when we come into an environment, we have to, before we understand the environment, we have to understand what is our expectation, be it the client or me, the artist. What am I here for? What, am I here just to take a snapshot? If I'm upstairs and it's an event, I'm gonna take a snapshot. Well, I still have to consider the environment. I have to consider what do I want this picture to look like. If I have an artistic goal, what is my mood, my texture, and my depth? Because I can change all three of those with this thing right here. And then I have to kind of survey the room. And we'll literally go through this. We'll survey this room. We'll put somebody right here, and we'll take their picture in a minute and play. And then we got the technical stuff. So here's just a couple pictures, and we've lost some of the detail that we shot. So I've stuck some of those in throughout the night. Kind of the cool shots that we've done. So when we survey a room, this was a senior shoot that we did on Main Street. We're losing the beauty of this young lady's red hair, and then the highlight of the sun coming in behind her. But there's 4 types of light, and we actually set the shot up to get this effect. You've got your main light, and another word for that is key light. So to make it interactive, I don't want to sit here and talk all the time. Let's ask some questions and get it exchanging, because I hate just being the one talking all the time. In fact, my boss only lets me talk 15 minutes, and I have to shut up. So I move my eye and I start talking. What is a main light? Somebody tell me, what's the defining factor of a main light? I know the studio guys know it, so we won't let them answer. What makes a main light? You may want to take a stab. So if I fire this light right here and it's on full power, and we got this light coming in, there's a little bit of light coming here, you see the light, and then if I'm blasting with this one, this obviously would be my main light. It's the key, it's my key light, right? Because it's the light that creates the shadow that your other lights have to fill in. So that's the definition of a key light. It's the one that creates the shadow that the others have to fill in. So that's your main light.
And so it's usually majority of the time, it's usually the most powerful light too.
Maybe. Not,
Yeah,
sometimes.
Majority of the time, there's also some key, there's other things that you want to do, some creative stuff that you may want to.
So it's and I usually like to make it the one that I'm working towards. So that's my main light, and our field light is just filling in. So like an ambient light today. So when we shoot here in a minute, one of these will be our main light. But you see there's light here, this is a light. We got light coming here, that's ambient light. Ambient light is the light that's generated from another means than the devices that you brought. So it's ambient light. You think of the sun. There's background light, which you see it here, illuminated from the back. You tend to think of the sun behind their head, lighting that out. There's also an accent light, which can be a hair light. It can be a side light. It can be a kicker light that's coming up underneath.
So how many lights did you use for this girl for outside?
If you were to look at her one, and Woody's got a beauty dish at the 10 o'clock position at 45 degrees into her eyes, using the field factor ratio on the light.
Did you use a background light?
That's the sun. So the sun.
Or uses,
the sun
okay,
is
so
the
the
actual
sun was
background.
behind her.
That looks terrible up there. That's a pretty
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to look at it here, it looks great. That looks horrible up there, because we're losing all the details, it's clipping the highlights. But
What time of day was it when you took that?
4 o'clock, 4:30ish, 5 maybe, when the sun's at 15 or 20 degrees up above the horizon, that's your good light,
Golden hour.
golden hour. And we had followed her around all over the place. So what we had to do is survey and set up for the shot. Because every time we move, the light's changing. If I'm trying to, we have to make them happy. So we have to be technical in nature and know this stuff and adjust on the fly without piddling, we don't have time to piddle. Because then the models get bored and they lose confidence in you and, especially at a wedding, it can get ugly real quick if you're. And then there's the technical stuff. So we were talking about key or fill. So we're going to use this tonight. I brought a couple extras, and I'll show you just what a 3-light setup would be. We'll do a main key light flash tonight. We'll put one on in the hot shoe, shoot it straight on, and see what that gives us. And then we'll go off camera and see what that gives us. Then we have to talk about on the back of these, do we use ETTL or manual? And I think every flash unit today carries those two settings. Do the Nikons, is it ETTL or is it just TTL for a Nikon? I can't remember.
I don't know, I don't have a flash.
Okay.
It's TTL.
It's TTL. Okay, they dropped the E. Well, that stands for basically through the lens. That's what this means. And the brain that's inside of this thing and then the brain that's in your camera through an ETTL is attempting to, when you use ETTL, what it does is, in a nanosecond, it fires a little flash of light, you can't even see it. It hits the subject, bounces back into this infrared eye, and it makes a determination based on what I told it, and it's trying to arrive at a correct exposure. And then it fires another flash at whatever power setting it thinks to get to the derived setting. And all that happens, well, it looks like one flash, but really it's so fast you didn't even know it. That is ETTL. Woody and I have shot both ETTL, and there's time, from our use and my use, there's times to do it, and then there's times that I don't ever do it because I lose 2 shots trying to set it, just about. And we won't go into all that tonight, but so we'll show both so you can see it. And then there's the power settings. Every flash has a power settings. There's full power, and then it moves and stops. So you just think of always half. So you got half of 1 is half. Half of the half is a fourth. Half of a fourth is an eighth. 16th, 32, down to 64. Some will go as low as a 1/128th of power, and it's just a little blip of light. So if you got 1 to half, to a fourth, to an eighth, to 16th, to a 32nd, to a 64th, to 1/28. So you got really 8 stops of light there to play with, if you think about it in terms of stops of light. What is a stop of light? A stop of light is just half of the light that was right before it, if you think about it. So we got to think about fall off. What's fall off? Fall off is if you take a picture and I line up 5 people deep, and I take a picture and you're on the front row and I blast you, but the person in the back didn't receive any of the light because the light fell off. That's fall off. Does anybody experience that? And take a picture with a flash, you're like, I can't get everybody lit up. What's going on? If they're deep in a row, that's called fall off. And there's the formula for it. I had to show you that because it took me forever really to rack my brain around it to understand it until Woody said, would you quit all that stuff and let me show you what fall off is? And then once I understood it, all that makes sense then. And because I'm running these formulas in my head, I'm like, I ain't got time to do all this, and I'm trying to, good Lord. And there's a rule that we use. And basically, that first one I'll show you. If So if I take a picture right here, and let's say that's, I don't know, 3 feet, 4 feet. If I double that distance, so if I go from 4 to 8, 2 steps, I just lost a quarter of my power. That's what that means. That's the rule of the inverse square. That's what your light's going to do. So I'll lose a fourth of the power if I double the distance from my. If I set it right here, whatever my setting is, and I double the distance, that setting no longer applies. It's only good now. I lost a fourth of that power.
So if you're going to change the settings, then that would mean you would put your flash into manual then, right?
Yes, I mean I do, but I'm compensating for that. But ETTL will attempt to do that for you. But there's some things that we have to do when you're using ETTL you got to take into consideration, which we'll talk about here in a second. Do you want to know more about this technical stuff, or would you rather? Is this too much headache? Is this? I can talk all day about this. This is good stuff for me, because I'm very technical minded. I try to ignore I'm a banker today. We'll come back. We are going to touch on it. This is a senior shot that we did, and it doesn't really do the justice. But this was done in a barn, and we've got 3 sources of light really on her. We've got, and we set her up, and you see the air light. This is actually a dark barn, and this door is pretty much dark. Was dark to the ambient, to the eyeball. And we set it up. Woody's shooting a hair light at her across this way, and we've got the ambient light coming in from the opening, which is like a big soft window, which is creating their face. And then we also threw I think it's a reflector that we used. I think it was a 3-light setup because we had a reflector. There's a little bit of fill light coming in behind her, or up underneath her. So I'm pretty sure that's what we did, because we had Woody sitting back here. We had the main light, which was the barn door opening, and we had just a little bit of fill light lighting up underneath the chin.
Do you suggest to people like for this girl, looks like she's wearing a white top, do you suggest for them to wear a color or something? Because doesn't that white shirt like throw things off?
Typically, yes.
Look at the monitor and you.
Yeah, it's a whole different picture on the
Yeah,
monitor.
monitors.
Oh, it's not a white shirt?
It is a white shirt, but it's not blowing up.
We're not blowing it out.
Oh,
And you're right. Most people are scared to death of shooting a white shirt. It doesn't bother me, because what happens if she's got a white shirt and the guy right next to her's got a black tuxedo on? So it's like a wedding shot. And your camera is trying to get to a 18% gray calculation, which it don't know what to do with a white and a black. It's just going to make those 18% gray. It's going to average them in together. So that shirt will turn gray, and the black will turn a shade of gray. That's what will happen. If you're shooting ETTL, that white shirt will give these flashes a fit, because it bounces out, sees that white shirt, comes back, and it doesn't necessarily make it all the way back to the back here and bounce back. So it's reading that white shirt, and it's like, woo, overexposed, so I'm going to power down. So it's going to be, when I fire with ETTL, unless I tell it to compensate for that white shirt, it'll be underexposed, it'll be dark.
But would you actually shoot that flash directly on her or bounce it off of something?
We shoot right on you.
Really?
Well, that right there, you can see where the flash is on her hair.
Yes.
Okay, that's a flash. You look at her eyes and you look at her chin, and that's done with a reflector on that particular picture. Otherwise, if we just shot it without the reflector and without the hair light, it would be an okay shot, but her chin would be dark, her eyes would be dark, and, you know, other than that, she'd be okay. But by putting a reflector on it, which a lot of people would do, you got rid of the shadows. And then to give it some more depth and to give it more texture and everything, that's why we put the hairline on.
so you had the light coming in through a side window, plus you were standing off to get the light coming from her hair side, and you had a reflector
Come
in
in.
there.
Yeah, so,
It had the reflector in front
yeah,
of it.
so if I'm her, I'm standing here, and, so Woody's back here, he's got a light casting into my hair. It's creating that hair light. I like that light. And then I got this big window opening, creating some light here, but then we have a reflector bouncing the sun back up to create some field light up under the chin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, reflecting. So we got one of these big reflectors back. We got some fun with that.
That was quite the setup then.
Yeah.
Well, it really is, you just gotta follow the light. Wherever the light is, you gotta make it work for you.
We can use this if we need to tonight, create a little light. So to set that though, when Woody and I approached this, and I wish I had a picture of just the barn door by itself, we had to assess this environment, just like we're gonna assess this environment here, and we have to figure out how to, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get that shot to create the mood that we're wanting, the texture, not blowing out her skin or blowing out her shirt. And so, how do we do that? So I found this, I thought this was cool. Oh, what to do. So we could shoot on P for professionals. Everybody have that on their cameras?
Yeah.
And I'll have to admit, it's kind of, I have done that even this year, just to see what the camera's going to try to do. Just as, sometimes as a starting point, I may do that. If I, sometimes my brain don't work and I have to restart, so I might shoot on P one time just to see what it gives me. If I'm having trouble. I don't do it a lot. I think I've only done it one time this year. But if you do, it could be a starting point, but bear in mind, you do have no or very limited control. The camera will attempt to do it all for you.
Which is almost like the automatic setting.
It's
Yeah,
essentially
like
automatic, just it gives you a few.
The only difference between P and automatic is you can control your flash on P. Other than that, they're the same.
Right. Here's some more pictures that we did. Actually, that one's coming in a little better. These are weddings, wedding. This was an engaged shoot, a young couple that we did. And so let's study on this picture here, because this one here probably mimics this room that we're in. And I shoot in this style all the time. I love this style right here. So I want my main subject to be highlighted. I want it to be the focus, so our eyes go to the brightest area that's in focus first. And a lot of times it'll start up here in this quadrant, and it moves, your eyeball is, it focuses right there, because that's the brightest part of the image that's in focus. So Woody and I just automatically know that's what gets the center attention of the light. And so we structured a light to do that. And then the background light is strictly just the ambient light. I mean, that's probably 20 feet back through there. I'm not, that's the natural sunlight coming through, peeking through. But to get that effect, what we had to do is be able to tell the camera that I want to capture that light back here, but I also want to capture this. I don't want to blow this out. So I have to create a balance between these two. I apologize for getting enough there. I normally have
And that shot, what time of day was that? That was bright sunlight.
brightest sunlight. So this is the technical side that we've developed and gone through, and we've done it so much now it's just kind of second nature. We don't even talk a lot of times. I mean, he's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing, or vice versa, and But that's what we're here to share a little bit about tonight, about our system that we use and how we do it. So some of the tools that we use, and I've got one hanging here. The light meter. I went back to old school, and I use a light meter now just on about every shot where there's a client involved. And I took this thing to Hawaii. And is that a laser pointer? Yeah. Thank you. Well, I'm a Tom now.
I can get you 250 of those.
Is it actually?
With your name on them.
Is it actually? Oh, so I can do that. Where will it point? Will it actually fire a laser beam?
It's just a flashlight.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just
You
like.
just lost your sale.
I do like that though, that's pretty
They
handy.
work
How do I
really
turn-
good. The door, I don't know. I'd have to see.
Okay, so I have a light meter. I know this is old school, but I will tell you that, and Woody will attest to it, because Woody is my best critic, and I need somebody to be my critic. He'll tell you that our accuracy of shots have gone up using this.
But he does use it on every shot.
Pushing the
Times I'd
point.
like to hide it on him.
Pushing the point, that's it.
Oh, yeah,
It's more and
okay.
more high tech, because when I first went to film school, and they were all manual stuff, they weren't just this all digital things.
Now that I wasn't gonna drag it out, but since it's on the screen, let me just show you what the thing is. And that's a whole other topic, but I will just show you. We,
He taught me to use that. I never did before.
this is a,
Great card.
And it
so
makes
this
a
is-
difference.
This is an X-Rite color checker. And we always set this shot, we always take this first shot like this in the light setting that we're going to be using on the second.
And what's that called?
It's a color checker. X-Rite is the name of the vendor, but it's a color checker. And, you know, this is our system. We don't get a royalty on this thing, but it does give you a true color. So this eliminates the need to white balance. Because what happens is when we take a picture here tonight, if we turn this light on and we're shooting with a flash, this has a different color temperature than that flash. That flash is 5,500 degrees. This thing's 3,800.
Something like that, 36.
So this is gonna make me green color. So I have a nice green tint, which is, will already make me look older, highlight my wrinkles depending on where I'm standing, and then I'm gonna have this nice warm light coming at me, or daylight coming at me, which is gonna make me even look older, because it's not really warm. So, but if I hold this thing here, you know, if I've got this going, and I've got that coming at me, this will give us a standard to use in Lightroom to go and tell it, because Lightroom knows that that's white, and it knows that's red, and it knows what that red's supposed to be. So it measures the actual light falling in the color that's reflecting, and it'll create a curve to adjust your light, adjust the color temperature of it.
That's the Conic that he has right there, he showed a few minutes ago. You can actually buy those two as a package now. There's a lot of places do sell them both
Yeah,
together.
that's
Why
why I
save
stole
money.
that, so you see them presented together.
Well, that really made a difference to me. I used to white balance with a gray card, but every gray card is different. They're not all the same. And what I've noticed when I color balance with that, the colors that people have got on are true colors. Now, why white balancing off of that and off a gray card doesn't give me the true colors, I don't know. But when I use that, I get true colors on everything.
So this is a gray card. So there's white. I'm sure that's 18% gray. That's probably what that's supposed to be. And now, I will show you, and Woody and I have done this. The back of this thing does have a gray card. It has smaller versions of that. It has white and it has gray. So what I do is, though, you know, I actually use a white to set my white point. I use the gray rather to set the white point. But then Lightroom is taking this color, and as Woody was describing, all these spectrum of colors, it's looking to compare and see if there's any shifts to the light that's occurring. And if it needs to punch the blues up or punch the reds up or bring them down because of the color spectrum of the light may be off. So it's going beyond this, it's actually writing a color. And you'll see the skin tones just pop out. It's incredible. So that's big for us.
Can you do the same thing in Photoshop, or?
Yes, actually this software comes with its own little generator that will import it, and it'll write the curve and send it out. Let me show you a last little thing we've got. Chris even brought a soft box, if y'all don't know what these are. Now the difference in these tools here today, these are all designed for a small flash. So this is a little Westcott Rapid Box. I don't have the liner on it, it's laying over there, but you can put a one-stop liner across, and now you got a big softbox. You can put a reflective dish in here and make it a beauty light, which is a more harsh, contrasty light. You've got, this is a little extension pole we have with a little reflector on the end. It's called a rogue flash fender. So I can get it right out there to you. Boom. And Woody and I've used this thing. We use this thing all the time.
Is that with a monopod, or what do you put on?
That's just a
Oh, it's the actual light pole that,
just a light pole. Yeah. Just a light pole.
so it's
Got a
meant for a
flash on
camera.
it. It's got a
So it's
flash.
actually a handheld type of, thing.
Yeah. And then, or we'll take this head here and put on that pole. No, not on the stand. Or we'll put an umbrella here. We've got soft boxes like this. Got one almost just like this. But I've kind of gotten where we haven't been using it because this little jewel here has done really a lot of our heavy lifting. Occasionally we'll go to a umbrella and use just the basic umbrella. We only use these lap shaping tools when we're looking for a certain effect. And we're not afraid to use these. Like when we're doing group shots, we'll send a tripod on this end and a tripod on this end and a kicker underneath, and we'll light up 20 people with a bare flash. Now I didn't used to use bare flash, I was scared to death of it. And Woody took me to task about it. He said, you gotta get over that. So, and we did some training, we did a video, and we've done some other stuff, and so I don't necessarily, and tonight we won't use one of these, and we can use one of these, and you'll see a softer light, but we can produce a professional portrait without any type of light modifier, just bare flash tonight. So how do we do that? We do it in our power settings. Remember, you don't blast them, so you make them nuclear, we adjust it. And that's another reason we use the flash, we use the light meter.
I've changed mine a lot in here, like upstairs when somebody gets baptized, they all get out in the hallway and you want to flash because it's a little dark here. I turn it way down just a little bit.
Well, yeah, let's untether that if you would, and I'm gonna just put a flash on the top. So, any questions? I know we've talked about a lot. We can talk very technical tonight if we want. But I was going to show some basic stuff so we.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I get a lot of emails from Adorama and B&H, and now they're really, really pushing these LED lights. Have you done any work with them? They're still kind of pricey.
Right. Well, LED, a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. LED gives you a certain color spectrum. It's one
This is
reason.
the on camera right here.
So he's got one that'll uses for video.
Actually, they're using some photography too, so,
They're
you know,
pushing
some
the
are actually using, a lot of them are, some are going to actually continuous light besides just flash, but there's, when you put the video light here, you don't have the high-speed shutters, shutter speed effects, so you don't have that, but for basic lighting, yeah, you can use these things, or you can use, they got a lot bigger lights too, if they use more.
Or flashlight, LED flashlight. We've used those this year alone.
And this right here. Battery's not fully charged, so.
Have you seen those pole ones, the poles,
And I can
that are
actually
just-
go in, I can do
just
it.
all light?
Yeah.
Right.
And those
You're
are,
talking about Jerry
Do you have that,
Jones, his
Yeah.
light
So
light
I-
stick.
yeah, the light stick,
I
yeah.
can-
Because those are pretty new, aren't
You
they?
know, light is light. What it matters to is what effect you're trying to do.
This actually, this is not variable temp.
Okay.
Actually,
It all is, how far the light is
I
from
can
the
have one, you
subject.
have, this one's
The
4,500
farther it gets, the harder
degrees,
it
which is
gets.
a little
The
bit
closer
warmer
it
than
is, the softer it is.
your
And
traditional.
You just gotta
Daylight's
look at
5,600.
what you wanna get.
This is more,
and how
This
simple
right
it
here
is
goes
to
down
move
before
around
200.
and stuff like that. The easiest place to shoot's in
You
a
know, the little
studio,
difference in the.
you know, like he said, he's got a place
So you-
upstairs,
you're using
he
that on
shoots
your
that all
camera?
the time. He can
DS-
figure out what he needs
DSLR,
up there,
you're using it for video.
and that's,
I
you
use it
know,
for video work.
simple for him.
Right?
Now he goes to the next place, he's gotta figure it all out again. But he's figured it out just from shooting so many times.
So light is light. Remember a little quote. And our job as photographers is to use whatever light that we can to create the capture that we want, capture the image that we want. It gives us the mood, the texture, the whatever it is, vision in our brain, or what a client's wanting, be it capturing somebody getting baptized, be it a wedding, be it a senior shoot, be it a ball game. Our job is to render that so it looks good and it pleases either us or the client. So we got to use whatever light's there. Now we did a wedding back this summer, and Chris was videoing. He had one of those lights and dark dance floor. We're lighting with some minis, and then I have him, hey, shine it over there. I made a quick adjustment, and I used his light. It's better than light to me. Have a flashlight in my hand. I've done this. You know, and so you improvise and use what light's there. So tonight, let's talk about this. We got a camera, we got a flash. We can shoot it straight on. Now, so if I take this image right here and I blast him at full power, assuming I don't blow him out and turn him into dust, you know, this little nuclear device on top here. Why does everybody say get the light off the camera? So from a technical point of view, can anybody tell me why do I want to get this light off my camera?
Causes pretty harsh shadows and even red eye and everything else.
Creates red eye, that's
So they
correct.
call that deer in the headlight look.
Yeah,
And the glare on his glasses.
you get glare, you get the deer in headlight look, you get harsh light. It's flat, because, why is it flat? Well, it's flat because there's no dimension. Because if you were to take a face and zoom in on it, and we all got these little pores, the light actually goes in and into that pore and feels all the texture of that little pore. So there are no shadows. So therefore it's flat. A lot of times it's evenly lit. So it's boring. Even if you do it technically right, most times it's boring because it has no depth or dimension, texture or mood to it. So how do we remedy that? And there are times that I have shot this year with this on top of the camera because we're doing an event and we're out walking around. Woody's got a real cool frame that he lets me borrow that gets this light head up off the axis of this lens, which helps the red eye. What's that called? L bracket or something? We can bounce it.
Flash bracket.
Flash bracket, right? We can bounce it. A lot of these babies have a little white card in them. Like that. If we're shooting in this church, and I know I've got a big white wall right here. Man, look at that big reflector. Big white wall. All I gotta do is do that and bam, I can light him as if Woody's standing over here with this light. I just gotta calculate the power loss that's gonna occur from here to here to here. I got a nice side light. Jerry Giannis, is that Giannis?
Close enough.
Big wedding shooter. What he'll do is if he's in a room like this, whichever way the face is looking, so if he's looking this way, that's the way he turns the light. If he's looking over there, he turns the light that way. And if he's not close enough to a white room, he will bounce it. Or if there's somebody standing here in a white shirt, he'll bounce off that white shirt, or he'll have somebody hold a reflector. Because he's not shooting dead on. So there are ways to not shoot dead on by bouncing. So I never shoot flat. I do try to bounce. So we were at Lake Tansy, Thunderbird.
Yep.
One of the wedding images was from Lake Tansy, and it has a drop ceiling just like this. It's perfect to, ricochet a shot off that. And light follows, this is technical, but just think about this. The angle of incidence, what is incidence? Incidence is the light that falls on the face. So the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. In other words, the bank shot. Shoot and pull. So if you're shooting the cue ball into the bank shot, light follows the exact angle. How about that? So if I bank it in there at 45 degrees, it's going to jump out of there at 45 degrees. So if I come in at this angle, you know, whatever that angle is, it's going to hit and it's going to come back out here at whatever that angle is, based on at some point on his face. Now, obviously, it's not a perfectly flat surface because there's texture in his face, there's curvature. So, and you got all these photons that's hitting, and they're going to come out and go different directions, but they're based on what it hits. But it is following the angle of incidence to the angle of reflection. So, then we have a diffuser on here. A lot of these lights have a diffuser. What's wrong? You know, do I do that? Not generally. Because we have, with Woody's help, I've learned how to not have to use these light modifiers.
How many stops do you lose with a deflector, with a,
I think
that?
that's a one stop.
just one?
One.
Okay.
Like Woody said, this is my new friend, and because it takes all the guesswork out. So most flash meters or light meter measures the light that's falling on something. That's incident light. Incident means falling. So light falling on me is incident. The difference with the meter that's in here is reflective. It's measuring the light that's bouncing off her, coming back into the lens. Again, it's taking consideration of the distance. And so this is a more accurate, pros use this all the time in the studio. David probably wears one hung around his neck. It takes the guesswork out. So what you can do though is you can tell it to measure the ambient light, which is the light falling naturally, or light generated by a flash. So today we're going to measure the ambient light, and you have to tell it two things. You have to tell it what ISO you're going to use set for your camera. Since everybody here has been using theirs, they all know what ISO is. The higher the ISO, the more grain, because it's amping up your sensor. And then you got to tell it what shutter speed you want to work, what you want to use. And Woody's correct that most cameras have a sync speed that their shutters are not designed to go over. This camera is 200 or 160? 200. 1/200th of a second is the sync speed, where this shutter will fire. When this light fires, the shutter will capture all the light. If I try to shoot it, say 1/4 faster, if I shoot faster, what will happen is it'll fire the light, but there'll be a nice little black line in the bottom because the shutter is faster than the light. Now there's ways around that. We can tell the flash to shoot faster, and that's called high-speed sync. And our flashes will go up to 1/8,000th of a second. These little babies here. So they're not restricted at 1/200th of a second. They'll go to 1/8,000th of a second. And it's literally firing. I can't go fast enough how fast it's firing in just a burst of light. And what it's doing is it's firing all these little micro lights, and as that shutter comes down, it's capturing the light. So that's high-speed sync.
And high-speed sync, you can also take it. I mean, you can take any background where you got a lot of light in the background. You can basically you can make the background black. You know, from a light to black.
That's right.
With high-speed sync, where you're not going to do it with the, slow shutter speed.
So today, if we're going to shoot, we'll shoot it here in a minute. So somebody tell me an ISO that you would like to shoot in this room. Think about grain, think about noise, think about your camera. Throw me out an ISO that you. What would you probably not use in here?
100 you wouldn't use.
Davis would use 100 in the studio or 160, whatever his whatever he's calibrated for. I wouldn't use 100 in here. There's no
Might
reason.
use 800 or 16.
Yeah, our cameras today will certainly deliver a great image without any grain. You can get away with that. Just for government's sake, I set this one on ISO 400. and 1/80th of a second. Well, I'm shooting with a, my rule of thumb is I try to always have a shutter speed at least equal to the focal length that I'm using on my lens. So why do I do that? Well, I don't want to blur this big old heavy lens. So if I'm, and I don't shoot portraits really less than 70 millimeters. 70 to 105 is really a good number for me. If you get below, and you can go 50 if you know how to do it right. You can do 24 millimeter if you know how to position the subject right, so you don't make them look like, big and blowed out like a
Funhouse mirror.
Yeah, that's right. Funhouse mirror. I see a lot on Facebook. I see blue snow all the time. That's David's favorite. Snow's not blue, people. And I laugh at that. And then people that look like they've been in a funhouse mirror. So 80 will give me a good speed that it won't blur necessarily with this lens. And so if I measure, all I'm gonna do is go capture the light. I'm not gonna use a flash at this point. I'm gonna stick it right here, I'm gonna push the button. It says that to get a proper exposure, I would need to shoot an aperture of 1.4. Well, I don't have a lens with me today that shoots 1.4. The fastest lens I have today is a 2.8, which, so to go from a 1.4 to 2.8, I go to 2, and then I go to 2.8, so I'd lose 2 stops of light if I shot it with my 2.8, ISO 400, 1/80th of a second, but it'd be 2 stops darker, and it'd look like not very good, because it's going to be dark unless I do something. So what can I do? Well, I can bump my ISO, so this start bumping this baby up. So let's say I want to shoot with this is a 4.0 lens. It's not the high dollar one. I say that it's expensive, but it's not the big buck one. So to get where this lens was shooted at 4.0, as wide as I want to shoot, I would need to use an ISO of 3200. I can just keep bumping the ISO, and it keeps moving the f-stop to it tells me. So if I'm just shooting natural ambient light in this room to get a proper exposure, 80th of a second, ISO 3200, 4.0 will give me a good exposure using these lights.
Or unless you have another light source that you can put on them and then do the
Correct.
meter thing all over.
That's the reason we're going to use these things. Because I don't want to shoot him where he's blended into everything. I want him to stand out, and this is my style, Woody will tell you. I try to make everything behind my subject go darker by 1 or 2 stops. I want him to stand out, and I want this to be a little darker. Because once you see him, just like we saw that young lady in the mirror, her husband, or husband now. So we have to know this setting, how to get there, and how to make our cameras do that. And we're going to do that here shortly. So, but look how this light's falling around. So there's a 4. If I come over here, there's a 5.6. So I jumped up a stop.
Aren't these lights different temperature?
They are.
Look quite a bit
They are. That's a different
Daylight
color
here
now. And
I get video edits.
and that helps us understand the light that's falling, which helps me set my camera more quickly. So it takes the guesswork out. And I use it in the field, use it on just about every shoot. I took it to Hawaii with me. And if anybody's seen it on my Facebook, I'm out there in the middle of the day taking a picture just to see what it's doing. And so everybody laughs at me, old school, but it's improved my photography.
Have you done any testing to calibrate between the light meter and the camera and that?
Yes, I have.
And how close are they? Or does it vary quite a bit? Or what?
It creates an algorithmic curve, and it's about 3.5 stops. So,
It's a big deal.
So this light meter is calibrated to this camera. So what I can do is I can actually tell it to. So if I think this is the middle gray, I can measure that. This could get real technical. I can measure that, and that's middle gray. And I tell it that's middle gray. And then as I'm working, what this light meter will actually do will tell me when it goes out of the dynamic range of this camera. It'll warn me. It'll warn me. I don't have time necessarily to do that in the field, but if I'm doing studio work like David is, I gotta do that. I gotta know when I'm setting lights, where's my, I want 3 stops off the back. Think about it like this. So, now this does measure in 18% gray. So, and they make a little device that you put on here in the spot meter, and you can look through here and, you know, if there's a mountain way out there and it's got a snow cap and the sun's hitting it, I can look in there and find it and boom, I can hit that and see what the exposure is way out there on that mountaintop. But when I do that, it tells me that, let's say it says based on whatever ISO 100 middle of the day, say it says F16 way out there. So I know in my brain, this is how this is supposed to work. That mountaintop that's lit by the sun is F16. Well, that's the brightest part of my image. But I don't want it to blow out, like our screen's been showing here, where it's ugly. I want detail. So I want that to be on the brightest part of my picture. And I know this camera here has a plus or minus 3.5 stop range. So I want to take a picture that I'm going to lower it 3 stops. So I ain't going to focus up there. I'm going to focus up in here and just fire it. And I've already set my dynamic range. I know I will not clip the brightest part of my picture because I just metered it, and I'm not going to exceed F16. I got real technical. I'm sorry. I probably should. That's what these are designed for. It will take the guesswork out. So, if you're a landscape photographer, I'd encourage you to learn to use one of these and spot meter.
And that's just called a light meter?
Yeah.
Which brand is that?
Seconic. They make 4 or 5 different versions.
How do you spell that?
Yeah.
Sekonic.
SC?
Sekonic.
That's the best light meter out there.
Is that what you guys have?
That's what I have. Yeah. I've got a different model, but
Then you get the real cheap ones, doesn't always have all the fancy things he
I think
basically
like
doing.
$300 to $800, something like that.
It's about, if you got this packaged with that other passport, name that, the color checker passport, it's about $450 around there. If you want them both together, but
You can find them on eBay for not this model, but you can find ones that's just, it's absolutely, I can take that and be perfectly fine and use it. The only reason I got this one is I crushed the display on the other one. So Sekonic, I had it under warranty. Sekonic gave me a.
Happens.
So if you have one of those, do you use the color chart thing too?
No, you don't have to.
You don't have to use them both?
No,
You should, but you don't have
You don't
to.
have
You
to.
don't have to use either one of them.
Right. And the reason that, and I do use my meter now, when Woody and I are doing a wedding, I don't have time to, excuse me, bride, hold on, stop, don't kiss. I don't have time. We don't have time. We gotta get the shot. But you know what we do? Prior to the wedding, we walk around and we're getting a sense for the dynamic range of that room. What's the lighting gonna be like in here? What's, you know, so I already, and with these cameras here, Woody taught me this, we go ahead and I arbitrarily set up for, it will memorize 3 different settings for me. So as my environment changes, I just switch to my custom control and boom, 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 and it's already set.
Which really is 4 settings, because if you're on manual, you're doing whatever you want, and then C1, C2, and C3 can all be set different ways, so all you do is turn.
Photography to me is, I can see why they call it mastering, because I forget everything I read. I don't remember it unless I practice it. I have to practice it to become a routine. I have to develop a routine this year, and that's the routine that you're going to see it here in a minute, what we do. And that's how I've learned, and there's 1,000 other ways to do it. So our way is not the right way by any stretch. It's just works
Not
for
the
us.
only way.
Okay.
It's the right way for you.
That's right.
When you take a light meter reading, you take it off the subject. You would never take it off of your color chart, would you?
Take off the subject.
Okay.
So, if we want to, so let's do this, and I don't think we're going to be able to tether, because I tried, and when I say tether, we'll hook this to the computer, and it would show the image that we take on the screen. It didn't recognize this camera, and it's probably because the firmware between these two is a little bit different. But let's take a picture, and let's put the camera on P. I gotta figure out how to do that.
Light back on, or?
Yeah, let's turn that on.
Where do you want to take the picture at? You want to take it right there? or do you
We'll
want
just take
to?
it right here.
Okay.
We're gonna put,
color temperature it is first.
we're gonna, we'll put Chris up here, somebody, we'll model Chris. Come on up here, Chris. All right. So here's what I want to do. My camera's in P. And as far as for professional, Chris is right there. Let's make it fun. So step right up under there.
Need to turn off the projector, maybe.
No, that's all right. We'll leave
Oh,
it
okay.
on there.
My new light.
And so
It'll
I'm,
give us texture.
yeah, we're gonna pull the texture. And we got all this, we got this happening, we got this happening. So Chris, while you're there, let's just for our own understanding, figure out how many stops of light's going on with you. How about that? So I'm gonna shoot my camera at ISO 400 because that's just what I had it set at, and I had it on 80. So let's take a measurement here and just see. So this is an ambient measure. It says I need to be at 3.2. That's the ambient light there. And if I come back here behind him and take a picture, if I take a picture up here or take a reading, I'm at 7. So wow, I went from say 3.2 is a third. So I went from, let's say 2.8. 2.8, y'all gotta learn these. 2.8 to 4 is 1 stop. 5, 6, 8. So there's 3 stops of light from here to here. If I take one back here, 4 or 5, what were we up here? We were 2.8, so I really got to stop a light right here. What do I got going back here? 3.2. So the light falling on here, on his face, is not as bright as what's falling back here. So I'm gonna leave the flash off. I'm just gonna take a picture. I wish we could see it. And so my camera meter is gonna try to figure all this out. And it did a good job. Y'all could, sorry, I wish we could do this. I can see this differential between here and here. I can see the letters. This is all in shadow, under his chin shadow. His eyes are dead, black eyes, dead eyes. I want eyes. I want light in the eyes. So, just shooting without a flash on professional gave me a professional shot. There's no client would pay us for that.
What did your camera?
What it get us? I'm sorry. Great question. 1/50th of a second at 5.0. So it slowed the shutter speed down to allow more light to come in. Because I was at an 80th. Half of an 80 is 40. So it tried to add a stop of light in here. Slowing the shutter down, which could risk me it's probably blurry actually if I were to zoom in on it a little bit for me. So we're having a pretty technical discussion. So if you're new to photography, you're like, oh my, what's all this? This is years of. So if y'all been shooting quite a while, you probably experienced some of this stuff.
So the shutter was 1/50th? So shouldn't have you been using shouldn't you have used a tripod?
Probably.
Oh, okay. Did I miss something? Because I thought when you did the meter reading, and that tells you what you should be doing on the camera, did you set the camera?
I put on P for professional.
The camera chose all the
If
settings.
he would have went to manual, he would have done
Yeah,
that.
if I went to manual, I would have plugged in what I wanted to do.
Oh.
Camera did what he thought.
Yeah. I just told it to shoot P for professional. I'm a mom with a camera that's taking pictures that's not trained. I don't want to discriminate anybody, but I see that all the time. Shoot it on P and I want to do a wedding. And that's just what you're going to get.
Snapshots.
It's a snapshot. Thank you. That's the technical term. So, or a dad with a camera. I see it both.
Or somebody with an iPhone just went,
Yeah.
Okay, so otherwise, with all those the readings that you just did, all the way, all around his whole head, what were you gonna put your
All right.
camera to?
He'll do that on
getting there.
that, but it'll still be flat and dead.
Right.
It'll just be a better picture,
Well,
a better snapshot.
let's Now I got the dome out. The dome out generally, if I were using, because I have directional light, like if that's a light source, you know, I just want to measure that light source, I'd have the dome in for this light source. But, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a reading here, 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 just everywhere, and I'll average it. We'll see what this light meter thinks an average exposure would be. And all I got to do is average it is take a reading, there's the space, plug it in, take a reading. So that's real bright, but I don't want that. I want to get right in the middle of it. Take a reading right there. So here's a half a stop difference, or a third from here to here. Put it in there. Let's get one back here. Let's get one in that shadow area. I'm going to avoid this highlight. And then, so what is my average? My average says I need to shoot at 4.0, ISO at 400, 1/80th of a second. So let's plug those in and go. Let's go to manual. And 4.0, this lens will hold that. 80th of a second, ISO 400. Now smile. All right. I can, if I were to compare the images,
Now, what do you do with like white balance in a room like this?
so we'll do it. We'll actually go through it. So I just need somebody to stand here like a board.
That's why nobody wants to do it.
Now, one of the things that when we're setting the shot, Woody, I'm gonna get Woody to help me. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Now we know if we flash this light on him, depending on where that is, and depending on the power setting, it's going to create a big old shadow back there. We don't want that. So how do we cure that? We move him off the background. We get the light at, we get it up a little bit at 45 degrees. So what happens is, if we're coming in at 45 degrees to this face at 10 o'clock, the shadows fall behind him, not to the side of him. Remember that? So wherever that light is, the shadow, depending on, if I go right up here, the shadow comes this way. If I go down here, the shadow goes this way. But if he's back off the wall, the shadow, the fall off occurs and the light never even reaches this way. So that's how we eliminate shadows on the background. David does that all the time, I'm sure, shoots them out on a gray background and it'll go black, or he can make it solid white, whatever he wants to do.
But if you're in a room like this and you put that flash back there and you're up here in front of him, right? Aren't you going to get shadows on his face?
Depending on what we set on the power in the camera, no. I mean,
You want shadows on his face, that's what gives you the depth.
yeah, I'm sorry, I was talking about behind him. But yes, we'll get some shadows on his face. All right, so let's, let me grab this. So generally, the first thing we do is we will take this. We're going to take a reading.
By the way, if you get these, do not put your hands on the actual colors, because it will change them. Make for sure you grab it by the side or underneath. But if you put your fingers on here, it'll change it over time.
Okay.
How far in did you bring it?
Oh, I'm just getting it all synced back up here because I'm at. Okay, so what we're going to do is, you know, we got him in this. Let's move you off this ugly light. Let's set you right here. Okay. So, and we're going to face the camera. So what we know is, when I look back through the camera, I have light coming on his face. Do I want all this to go dark back here? You want to see all this?
No, you want it dark.
It's ugly because it's not set for, it's not for a pleasing photo. That's a snapshot. If I just show you, I'm documenting everything in this room if I eliminate everything. So we want this to kind of go dark back through here. And so what's happening back here though? Let's take I need to kind of know what's going on back here though. I can play around in the camera and get it. So let me just take a quick meter back here and see what's happening. Okay. So that's a F2 back there. Now, this is real simple. To go from F2, and this lens, if I shoot him wide open, so wide open is F4 on my lens. Wide, when you say wide open, that's your depth of field. If I make it real small, you know, I'm going to bring all that into focus. I don't want all that in focus, so I'm going to shoot wide open. And with that lens, as long as I'm about 10 feet back, I should be in focus from the point of his nose to his ear on that lens. We've got lenses over there that you couldn't do that on. But for that lens, we should be okay. All
What
right.
lens is that?
This is 24 to 105 f4 lens. It's L lens. All right, so now my general way of thinking is if I know that's an F2 back there, and if I shoot him with an F4 up here, that's 2 stops of light. If I really want it to go black, I'll shoot with like 3 stops of light, maybe 4. 4 will turn it pitch dark to pitch light back there with the exception of these highlights. I just metered that pole, so the brightest part falling on that pole is a F2. So I'm just going to really set these lights to shoot at a 5.6. That's 3 stops difference back through there. The highlights of the bright lights will show, everything else will go dark, and we should have a pleasing photograph, assuming I don't blow him out. So how do I get this flash to shoot at 5.6 power? That's what I've got to do now. So I've got to use my power button, and you notice I can carry this around, so I haven't even took the first shot yet. Got 60 at 400. So what I want to do is just jump over here to the, I think we're at a 16th.
I didn't even look. You want me to look?
I got it right here. We're at an 1/8 of power. So I'm going to start out with an 1/8 of power. I can adjust power on this. We're just going to take a meter reading here. And I need to get to a 5.6. We'll push the button. I'm going to hit fire. I'm at F10. Wow. So at 16th of a power, I can really see that. So we're at 1/8 of a power. We're not 10 feet. I'm at F10, so we're close to F8, aren't we? So what do I do? I can move that back. And here's where that big old formula we saw, if he doubles that distance, we lose 2 stops. We can't double the distance because we ain't got enough room. But if he had went from here and doubled it, I'd have lost 2 stops. So F8, 5.6, that's real close. But since we've hit the wall, he probably got me a stop there, real close. So I've got to pull a little power down. So I'm going to drop it 1 to an F6 to a 16. There's a stop. We'll be real close. 5.6 dead on it. How about that? So I'm going to put 5.6 in my camera and take that picture, and we should have a great picture. We hope. Chris will smile.